contact forms are a universal standard for every site. Despite this, WordPress doesn't come with a built-in contact form. This leads it up to us developers to program one. Creating a contact form wouldn't be the hardest thing to do. We already have the knowledge to create one ourselves. Even though contact forms all do the same thing, different sites can have different fields. For example, a doctor may have a field for what kind of inquiry a patient has. A home designer can have a field for the budget from the homeowner. There are various kinds of scenarios. Creating a very flexible and powerful contact form can be time-consuming. Luckily, there is a suitable and great workaround for these kinds of situations. We can use a third-party plugin to handle this. Since contact forms are so common, there are hundreds of plugins out there that take care of creating and handling contact forms. In the resources section of this lecture, I provide a link to a free plugin called Contact Form 7. As you can see, this plugin has over 1 million active installs, so we know that this plugin is pretty reliable. From experience, I see a lot of themes bundle this plugin with their theme. We should too. If you prefer another plugin, feel free to use that one instead. Now, the question is, how do we assure this plugin is installed whenever a user installs our theme? We can't always assume the user will have it installed. You could just download it and then include it with PHP, but this would be inefficient. We would have to manually update it every time it's updated. It would also bloat our plugin heavily. Can you imagine having to manage your plugin along with 10 other plugins? It would be disastrous. The most effective solution would be to notify the user of the required plugins and then help them install those plugins with a simple UI. That would take a lot of code to write, but luckily, someone has already created the solution for us. That solution is called TGM Plugin Activation. In the resources section, I provide a link to this class. This class handles a lot of the work for us, and it does exactly what we need. It'll check the user's WordPress site and their plugins. It'll check if the site contains the plugins needed. If they don't have those plugins, then it'll add a warning notice and instruct the user to install those plugins. It'll also provide a UI for installing all plugins. It's really great. It's a really great class, and it's very lightweight. It's just one file, so you don't have to worry about your theme being bloated. Let's get started. First, we need to download this file. There are a lot of files inside this zip file, but the only file we care about is the class-tgm-plugin-activation.php file. Let's open up our themes folder and navigate to the includes folder. Create a new folder called libs and drop this file into this folder. Open up your code editor and require this file from within the functions file. We use the require_once function instead of include because this is what the developers recommend. So we'll heed their advice. Keep in mind that this class can also be used in plugins. So how do we prevent from getting errors of classes being redefined? Well, we don't have to do anything because the developers have taken care of this for us. If you open up this class, you'll find the class wrapped inside this conditional statement. This statement will check if this class has already been defined. If it has, then it won't be redefined. Like I said before, this is really a great piece of code to use in your theme/plugin. Alright, now we can begin using this class. Inside the zip file, there is another file called example.php that provides a very detailed example on how to use this class. It's very neatly commented, and all examples are very clear. After this course, I highly recommend you take the time to look over this example file so you can get the most out of it. The first step we need to do is use an action hook called tgmpa_register. The function to call is ju_register_required_plugins. Create a file from inside the includes folder called register-plugins.php and define our function here. Include this file from the functions file. We're first going to create an array called plugins. This will be an array of plugins our theme requires. Each plugin we want to require will also be an array. We only have one plugin we want to require, which is the Contact Form 7 plugin. There are a couple of keys we can set. The first key is the name of this plugin. We can grab this from the plugin page, which is Contact Form 7. The next key to set is the slug. This would be the plugin's unique URL from the WordPress repository. You can grab this from the URL of the Contact Form 7 plugin. You don't need the whole URL, just this bit that says contact-form-7. Lastly, we can set the required key. We have two options here. If we set this to true, then the class will tell the user this class is required for this theme to work. If false, then WordPress will recommend this plugin instead. It's up to you whether a plugin is required or recommended. I'm going to set this to true. That's it for the plugins array. Next, we need to create an array called config. This will contain the settings for the class. There are a lot of settings we can set, but the following are the only ones we care about. ID. This is a unique ID. Keep in mind we use this class multiple times, so we want to make sure that these plugins and settings are related to our theme only. Menu. This is menu slug that WordPress will use for displaying the UI. The recommended path is tgmpa-install-plugins. Parent_slug. This will be the page to use for displaying the UI. Once again, it's recommended we use the themes.php file. Capability. Who can install and activate plugins? We'll be using the edit_theme_options capability. Has_notices. A Boolean value which will determine whether or not the admin will be notified about required plugins. We want to set this to true. Dismissible. Whether or not the notice messages can be dismissed. Set this to true. We don't want to annoy our users with irremovable notices. The very last step to call is a function called tgmpa. This function has two parameters, which is the plugins to install and then the configuration settings. That's it. Let's go to the plugins page. You will now see this notice informing us to install the Contact Form 7 plugin. Let's click Install Plugins. We now have this table of plugins to install along with additional information. Let's install the Contact Form 7 plugin. Then we can go to the plugins page and we will now see the plugin installed for us. Activate it. The new menu item that pops up is called Contact. Just like that, we were able to install and activate a third-party plugin with very little code or work. Now, we don't have to worry about keeping track of this plugin, as WordPress will do it for us. All thanks to the TGMPA class.